Through the short span of time between 1997 and 1999, the Kindred were plagued by a mysterious ailment known as the blood curse. The affected found their minds slipping away into bedlam, and their bodies wasting away. The source of this disease, an unknown phantom in the darkness. Some say that some twisted blood sorcerer within the Sword of Cain created this nightmare to vex the Kindred population. Others believe it was God, punishing vampires for their dark unlifestyles. Many in the Nodist community spread the theory that Cain, the Dark Father himself, was disappointed in his legacy and inflicted his children with this plague, a sign of his bloody wrath. Whatever the cause, Kindred all over the world felt its effects, but none so more than the vampires of Berlin and Atlanta. No one knows why these two cities were struck so viciously. The losses were so great that only the Great Plague of the Dark Ages could be used to compare the epidemic's devastation. And just as mysterious as it started, it faded away. Greetings, Kindred. I am Voivode Mekhet, and welcome back to our World of Darkness and another episode of Metaplot Monday. And a very special episode that is indeed, because today we are actually being sponsored. Not by a game, not by a product, not by a VPN or anything like that, but our first ever sponsor is going to be the AIDS Ministries. We are going to be spreading the word to drop the stigma on getting tested, to make sure that we're healthy, because there's so many different ways out there that you can actually become affected by this horrible disease. You could have family members. You could yourself get sick from a blood transfusion. There's so many ways of getting affected by this, and it's found that sometimes people are just terrified to even admit it to their own family, and that's what needs to not happen. So the AIDS Ministries and our World of Darkness are working together to go ahead and get that spread out. Maybe it might be a good idea to do maybe a annual testing of a gaming troupe. You've got everybody together, why the hell not? And they were nice enough to send me a test, and I'm going to go ahead and test myself right here as I explain how everything works, how you can get a hold of them in just a little bit. In 1053, Rhys ap Lluan was being crowned the king of Ruffenoig, a region of Wales, by the Saxon king Edward the Confessor at Westminster Abbey. However, the heir fell ill and sent his brother Owain in his place. Sometime later, it was revealed that the sickness was actually a trap designed to kill Owain, who was in love with Agnehard, the bride of Rhys. Owain's assassin was a Ventru that embraced him. Accompanied by his ghoul, William, Owain returned home in 1093 to wreak vengeance. He killed his brother and pitted his nephews, Morgan and Lorweth, against each other by linking them and having Morgan murder Lorweth. To prove his virtue and competence, Morgan set out on a quest to slay a monstrous animal who lived in a cave, a wolf-like creature called Blade, who had been ravaging flocks of sheep of the kingdom. Blade, however, was actually a bestial gangrel who had been terrorizing the peasants. Surprisingly, Morgan succeeded by putting a stake through his heart, giving Owain the opportunity to commit diablerie on a powerful elder. After the deed, he quickly lost interest in his family and departed, but not before saying goodbye to Harengar, now an old woman in her 60s, who had been living in the Abbey of Holywell. Around 1300, Owain was driven out of Wales by the Norman Ventru who accompanied William the Conqueror. He took refuge in France. in the midst of the Black Death. By this time he had begun his search for the Holy Grail. In 1375, Owain left France for England, where he learned that Joseph of Arimathea, the guardian of the Grail, had taken up residence at Glastonbury Tor. Owain drained Joseph of Arimathea of his blood, but never put his hands on the Grail. The powerful and ancient blood of this mortal made Owain completely forget his passage through England and his knowledge of the Holy Grail. That same year, a Toreador friend convinced Owain to leave France. He arrived in Toledo in Spain during the reign of Ferdinand V. There he met El Greco, a Toreador anarch and prince of Toledo, who became his friend. Sometime later, the death of Guillaume in 1450 at the hands of the Inquisition plunged Owain into deep despair, and he fell into torpor. Here I am, inside the same area that I was before with the same thing. But we are going to go ahead and check out this right here. It is the OraQuick HIV test. This is my first time opening it. You guys are going to be here with me. We're having a box opening today. Anyway, when you open this, which it is very nice, it's easy to read, simple instructions. OraQuick is an in vitro diagnostic home use test for HIV in oral fluid. This HIV test works by looking for your body's response to fighting HIV virus antibodies. Use this test only as directed. And then there's a when you should use the test and when you shouldn't use the test on this thing. So when you open it, you get this interesting little box right there. And it has this interesting little setup on the inside where we have an important notice. We have a little booklet. And, oh, it's got a drawer. That is really cool. I kind of like, this is just a really good packaging. We have the test right here. It comes with a pencil, a couple of little booklets, an envelope right there. All right, so let's go ahead and read through these little pages because this has a very nice little booklet right here on how to do things. This actually has a lot of really good, this is just very self-explanatory here. You can read the results 20 minutes after you start. You must read your results between 20 and 40 minutes after you start the test. You are encouraged to read the booklet, HIV Testing and Me, which is this one right here, HIV Testing and Me. Do not open any of the packets until you are ready to begin the test. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do this. This is actually something really cool, and I'm considering making it an annual or maybe even biannual activity for my gaming troop. Like, we're all here anyway, so let's go ahead and do this. Let's be safe. We're all adults, and we know that, you know, things happen. So there's really no reason to worry about, like, doing this kind of thing. If you the next thing is open the test stick. This is the test stick right here. Kind of looks like a pregnancy test, truthfully. I'm going to use my phone, set this for 20 minutes, and I'm going to wait until it tells me to press the button. Gently swipe the pad along the upper gums once and your lower gums once. Next, drop and start timing. Put the test stick directly into the test tube where it's indicated on the upper portion of the kit. So this is telling me to document my timing. So let me just close this real quick. Right here, you'll see these little colored swatches. I'm not sure how much detail you can see, but you write down your times right here. Start time, read time, and the test no longer accurate. I like how detailed this is. This is actually very nice. So this is a very simple test. We are going to open this tube of the solution, and then we're going to put it right inside its little pocket right there with the lid off of it. Then we're going to swipe our top and bottom gums with this and put it in there, and we're going to wait 20 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. You got to be really careful when opening this because you don't want to spill any of the liquid. The liquid's needed. All right, so that's going to go right in there. This pops in very similar to a battery. Going to open this. Pull out the test stick. And I'm going to rub my gums 1 time each. That goes inside the tube and fits inside of this little section. And then there's a little flap on the inside that covers it, probably for light exposure. Don't really know. And I'm going to hit 20 minutes. 20 minutes later. All right, 20 minutes. All right, so now all we got to do is move this little tab that's right here, and it reveals the results of your test. And the way that it works is if you have 1 line, you're negative. And if you have 2 lines, even if it's just the faintest of little lines, you're positive. And going by what I've got right here, I've got a negative result. So that's very good for me. That means that I don't have any signs of having HIV. Now, it is also a very good idea to have yourself checked out by a doctor every once in a while. Go to one of the free clinics or something. Those are resources that we have access to. So anyway, the AIDS Ministry is just a very good organization. They're very nice. They sent this to me for free. They'll send one to you for free. Just use the QR code that's on the screen, and they'll send it to anyone in the United States. So thank you very much for joining me for this. Upon reawakening in the 1700s, El Greco, who had become a Priscus in the Sabbat, told Owain about the events of the last 3 centuries, the end of the Anarch Revolt, and the creation of the vampiric sects. Impressed by the idealism of his friend, Owain joined the Sword of Cain. In the 18th century, Owain met Albert Bowman, a Malkavian, who would become his friend. Between 1917 and 1927, Owain immigrated to the United States with 3 new ghouls he had created in Spain. He built a financial empire in the New World and adopted the name Owain Evans, joining the Camarilla of Atlanta in order to spy for its rivals. Around 1967, Albert joined in the sect as well, and the 2 friends decided by mutual agreement to hide their relationship. By 1997, Owain Evans was a respected elder of the city and the confidant of the Prince J. Benison Hodge, to the point that, while not being primogen, he was invited for its meetings exclusively for his advice. Owain was bored and thought often about entering torpor once again until he received the visit in his haven. The gangrel Nicholas brought him a message from Berlin, a letter from El Greco, announcing a movement of one of his pieces on the chessboard that was played by the 2 friends through correspondence. This letter sent Owain into a rage because it was the first time that he was beaten by El Greco in the game. In addition, Owain was reminded of his obligations to the Sabbat by El Greco. Miguel, a pack priest of the sect, went to Atlanta to signal Owain. El Greco demanded his presence urgently in Toledo. Before he could leave town, however, Albert asked him to keep a statue in his haven for a while, which he accepted, but not without suspicion. Owain appealed to the Giovanni to organize the trip. He was accompanied by Miss Kendall Jackson and one of his ghouls. Arriving in Toledo, El Greco had showed Owain that he had written him a great deal of correspondence. From these letters, Owain learned that the blood curse originated of Sabbat experiments, conducted by a team under the vampire Carlos, Carlos is a city gangrel of the 11th generation and a member of the Talons Pack. He is the ultimate yes man among the Inquisitor companions, even dabbling in infernalism, if so directed by his superiors. He rarely takes initiative, but when ordered, he follows it at the risk of his own destruction. However, the experiment had gone terribly out of control. The only problem is that, although perfectly imitated, the letters were not from Owain, which is carefully explained to his friend. The fact that disturbed Owain the most is not the letters, but the experiment's name, Project Arengard, after his old mortal love. El Greco explained to Owain that he did come to infiltrate Carlos's faction. Without saying a word to El Greco, Owain decided to meet Carlos. He then left Kendall in the care of El Greco and wandered the streets of Toledo in search of minions of Carlos, and discovered about one with the name of Morgan. Around the same time, he met Clay Kodesh, a Nosferatu prophet. He began to be haunted by visions more and more often, suffering greatly. He was attacked by Nicholas, but the two adversaries were interrupted by members of the Sabbat. Nicholas and Owain, too weak to fight, were captured by Carlos's henchmen. Nurtured by Carlos, who gave him the desired sustenance, Owain concluded two things. First, that the letters of the forger said the truth about the experiments, and second, that his friend El Greco went mad. He still believed that the city that is leading was in fact ruled by Carlos. In the last 15 years, since 1983, Owain escaped his capture and returned to Toledo to retrieve Kendall, narrowly escaping a raid by Carlos's men on the refuge of El Greco, who perished in the subsequent struggle. He returned to Atlanta via flight chartered by Lorenzo Giovanni. Back in Atlanta, in time to witness the execution of his longtime friend Albert Bowman by Prince Benison, Owain could barely restrain his contempt for the ruler of Atlanta, who sent his scourge, the Brujah Xavier Klein, to check him out. Returning home, Owain broke the statue that was entrusted to him by Albert, only to discover that it contained a medallion. Klein had also arrived and killed his ghouls before facing Owain himself in battle. Owain and Kendall fled America, moving from Atlanta to Berlin, again with the help of Lorenzo. It was indeed through a hostel in the city that El Greco and Owain exchanged correspondence, since Owain immigrated to the New World. Having understood during his recent trip to Spain that the recent letters were made by a forger, it obviously meant that the real letters had been intercepted. Going to the inn in order to learn more about the identity of the forger and his intentions, he met the Nosferatu Ellison, an elder of Berlin. The latter, noticing that Owain had the same medallion, directed him to England, where the witch Isabella awaited. Owain is the kinslayer of prophecy, and obtained the power of healing ever since he drank the blood of Joseph of Arimathea. After discovering his ability in 1999, he became known as the Wanderer, and travels the world to release all Canaanites from the blood curse. So the story of Owain is completely insane. I don't know. Just the idea of putting one vampire through that, it's a lot. It's just so much. Now, I love the fact that he's kind of back and forth on his loyalties when it comes to the Sabbat and the Camarilla. But the idea that he ran around himself, around the world, to, like, I guess, lay his hands on the affected of the blood curse is just insane to me. But it's a damn good story, and it's one of those, like, world level changing events. And the story, and again, I apologize for any mispronunciation of names because I can't speak Welsh. They have a complex, beautiful language that my simple tongue just cannot master. It's very interesting to see this Venturanti tribute, who has such a devastating role in the Blood Curse and what he did, but also to eat a figure like Joseph of Arimathea is just, I don't know. I think that older stories within Vampire the Masquerade were just so off the wall crazy that the majority of the main stories that I hear, such as this one, I tend to write off as like accepted rumor more than anything. It was very fun learning about how the Blood Curse affected everything and what what Owain's interactions in it all was. Plus, I kind of wish I had known this story when I went to Atlanta. It does give me more ideas of things to look for the next time I go, because I like finding like real world locations and things like that. So I need to get myself a copy of the Blood Curse trilogy and read through that crazy roller coaster of a ride. But anyway, thank you for joining me. Thank you to our patrons, and thank you for our sponsors at the AIDS Ministries for making this video possible. I hope all of you have a wonderful day. I hope all of you stay safe, and I hope all of you stay healthy. And if you're not, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to get yourself tested. And just understand that you're not alone. I am Voivode Mekhet. Thank you for joining me. Good evening.